I never liked Valentine's Day. It wasn't because I was bitter or heartbroken, I just found the whole thing too forced, too commercialized. But that year, I had a reason to go out on February 14th. My best friend, Ria, had set me up on a blind date. "Come on, Ananya," she had begged. "You can't stay locked up in your apartment every weekend. This guy is different, I swear. He's charming, kind, and super good-looking. Just give it a shot." After a week of relentless pestering, I caved in. What was the worst that could happen? I had agreed to meet him at a small Italian restaurant downtown. His name was Arif. The evening started off fine. He was polite, well-dressed, and had an easy smile. Over the course of the meal, I found myself lowering my guard. He was funny, intelligent, and had a way of making me feel at ease. But something felt off. I couldn't pinpoint it. Maybe it was the way he kept looking over my shoulder, as if expecting someone to interrupt us. Maybe it was how he never quite answered my questions directly, always diverting the conversation back to me. It wasn't alarming, just peculiar. After dinner, he offered to walk me home. I hesitated but eventually agreed. The streets were quiet, and the cold February air bit at my skin. We walked side by side, his presence strangely comforting yet unsettling at the same time. When we reached my apartment building, I thanked him for the evening. He smiled, but his eyes lingered on me a moment too long. "Can I see you again?" he asked. I hesitated. "I'll think about it." He nodded but didn't move. Just stood there, watching me. Feeling uneasy, I hurried inside and locked the door. I sighed, relieved, and chalked up my nervousness to first date jitters. Then, the messages started. At first, they were sweet. "Had a great time tonight, Ananya. Hope you did too." I replied with a simple, "Me too, thanks." An hour later, another one. "You looked beautiful tonight." Then, at midnight, "I can't stop thinking about you." I didn't respond. Something about the last message unsettled me. The next morning, I woke up to more messages. "Good morning, beautiful. You're all I can think about. Why aren't you replying?" I ignored them. By the evening, the tone shifted. "I don't like being ignored, Ananya." I stared at my phone. My gut twisted. Maybe I was overreacting, but something told me this wasn't normal. Then my phone rang. His name flashed on the screen. I didn't answer. A minute later, a text came through. "I know you're home." I froze. How did he know that? I lived alone, and I hadn't posted anything online about my plans. Then another message. "Your lights are on. You look beautiful in that blue top." My blood ran cold. I jumped up and rushed to the window. My apartment was on the second floor, facing the street. I scanned the road below but saw nothing. My hands trembled as I grabbed my phone and blocked his number. The rest of the night, I barely slept. Every little sound made me jump. I checked the locks twice before crawling into bed. The next day at work, I told Ria about it. "That's creepy as hell," she said. "Block him everywhere. If he contacts you again, go to the police." I nodded. But the fear didn't go away. That night, I kept the lights off, barely moving from my couch, listening for any sound outside my door. Around midnight I heard it. A soft scratching at my front door. My breath caught in my throat. I crept closer, peeking through the peephole. Nothing. But then a knock. Gentle. Persistent. I didn't move. My heart pounded. My phone was in my hand, ready to call for help. Then I heard it. "Ananya," his voice whispered from the other side. "I know you're in there. Just let me in." Panic surged through me. I backed away, heart hammering. Then silence. Minutes passed. I didn't dare breathe. Then my phone vibrated. A new number. "You can't ignore me forever." I called Ria. She insisted I come to her place. I grabbed my keys and bolted, checking the hallway before stepping out. I made it to my car, heart pounding. As I pulled out of my parking spot, I saw him. Arif stood under a streetlight, watching me. His face was unreadable, but his eyes, they burned with something dark. I sped away. The next morning, I went to the police. They took my statement, but without proof, all they could do was warn him. That evening, Ria stayed with me. At 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. A picture. It was me, sleeping in my bed. I screamed. Ria bolted upright. The realization hit me like ice. He had been inside my apartment. We called the police. When they arrived, they found signs of forced entry at my bedroom window. The lock had been broken, but Arif was nowhere to be found. The next few days were a blur of fear. The police kept an eye on my place, but there was no sign of him. Then, a week later, they caught him. He had been hiding in an abandoned house a few blocks away. Inside, they found pictures of me, some taken weeks before our date. He had been watching me long before I ever met him. Valentine's Day will never be the same for me. It was the night I learned that monsters aren't supernatural. They don't need fangs or claws. Sometimes, they wear charming smiles and whisper sweet words. And they never take no for an answer. Valentine's Day was supposed to be just another evening, one I'd spend in peace, far away from the forced romance and over-the-top gestures. But fate had other plans. It all started with a blind date, something I never would have agreed to if not for my best friend, Ria. "Come on, Ananya," she pleaded. "He's amazing. Smart, charming, and trust me, he looks like he walked out of a movie. Just one date. If it's awful, I'll never set you up again." After relentless nagging, I finally agreed. What was the harm in one dinner? The man's name was Arif, and we were meeting at a quiet Italian restaurant downtown. From the moment I walked in, I spotted him instantly, tall, well-groomed, dressed sharply in a fitted black suit. He stood when I approached, smiling warmly, and pulled up my chair. He was every bit the gentleman. The conversation flowed easily, but something gnawed at me. He was too perfect, too practiced. He never spoke about himself much, always deflecting back to me. And yet, there was something unsettling in the way he held my gaze, as though he were memorizing me. After dinner, he offered to walk me home. I hesitated but relented. The streets were quiet, the chill in the air making me shiver. When we reached my apartment, he lingered a little too long. "Can I see you again?" he asked. "I'll think about it," I said, offering a polite smile. His eyes locked onto mine. "I hope you do." I closed the door, exhaling in relief. Maybe it was nerves. Maybe I was overanalyzing. But as I lay in bed that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Then, the messages started. At first, they were harmless. "Had a great time tonight, Ananya. Hope you did too. You look stunning tonight." Then, at midnight, "I can't stop thinking about you." I ignored it. The next morning, more messages. "Good morning, beautiful. Why aren't you responding? I don't like being ignored, Ananya." My stomach twisted. The texts became more frequent, more desperate. Then my phone rang. His name flashed on the screen. I didn't answer. A moment later, a new message. "I know you're home." I froze. Another message followed. "Your lights are on. You look beautiful in that blue top." A chill ran down my spine. I rushed to my window but saw nothing. My hands shook as I blocked his number. That night, I barely slept, every creak and rustle amplifying my fear. At 2 a.m. I heard it, a soft scratching at my front door. My breath caught in my throat. I tiptoed to the peephole. Nothing. Then a knock. Gentle. Insistent. "Ananya." His voice was a whisper. "Let me in." Panic surged through me. I backed away, heart hammering. Then silence. Minutes passed. My phone vibrated. A new number. "You can't ignore me forever." I bolted. I grabbed my keys and drove straight to Ria's apartment. As I pulled out of my parking spot, I saw him, standing under a streetlight, watching me. His expression was unreadable, his eyes dark with something sinister. The next morning, I went to the police. They took my statement, but without physical proof, all they could do was file a report. That night, Ria stayed with me. At 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. A picture. It was me, asleep in my bed. I screamed. The realization crashed over me. He had been inside my apartment. We called the police. They arrived quickly, discovering signs of forced entry through my bedroom window. The lock had been tampered with. But Arif was nowhere to be found. The following days were a blur of fear. I barely left my apartment. Then, a week later, the police found him. Arif had been hiding in an abandoned house nearby. Inside, they found a collection of photos of me, taken over the past few months. He had been stalking me long before we ever met. Valentine's Day will never be the same for me. It was the night I learned that monsters aren't supernatural. They walk among us, blending in. And sometimes, they wear a charming smile. ##### I never cared much for Valentine's Day. It was a day for couples, for extravagant gestures, for declarations of love that felt more like performances. It was never meant for people like me, single, cynical, and content with my own company. I had planned to spend the evening curled up with a book and a glass of wine, but fate had other plans. It started with a party invitation. "Come on, Mira," my friend Ria pleaded. "It's just one night. A Valentine's party at Ayan's villa, free drinks, good music, and plenty of people to meet." I groaned. "You know I hate these things. You're always complaining about being bored. Just come. If you hate it, you can leave." Against my better judgment, I agreed. The party was extravagant, just as I expected. Heart-shaped balloons, red and white streamers, dim lighting, and loud music. I stuck to the corner, nursing a drink, watching people dance and laugh. That's when I noticed him. A man sitting alone in the far corner, his sharp gaze fixed on me. He was well-dressed, strikingly handsome, but something about him made me uneasy. His dark eyes didn't waver as he observed me, and when our gazes met, he gave me a slow, knowing smile. I looked away. Minutes later, he was beside me. "Not a fan of parties?" "Not really," I admitted. "Same here. Too many people, too much noise." His voice was smooth, confident. His name was Karen. He was charming, polite, funny even. Despite my initial apprehension, I found myself relaxing. Maybe this wasn't so bad after all. We talked for hours, and as the party wound down, he offered to walk me to my car. "Let's exchange numbers," he suggested. I hesitated. Something told me I shouldn't, but I ignored the instinct and gave him my number anyway. The text started the next day. "Had a great time last night, Mira. Hope we can meet again. Thinking about you today." I replied politely but kept it short. Then came the calls. If I didn't answer, he'd text, "Why are you ignoring me?" I don't like being ignored. My stomach twisted. Then, late one night, my phone buzzed again. A picture. It was my apartment door. Chills shot down my spine. I ran to my window and peeked outside. Nothing. But I knew I wasn't alone. Then came a knock. Soft. Deliberate. "Mira." His voice was a whisper. "Open the door." I backed away, my heart hammering. I grabbed my phone, dialed Ria's number with shaking hands. The knocking stopped. By the time she arrived, there was no trace of him. The police took a report but found nothing. No fingerprints. No cameras capturing him. Could be a prank, they suggested. But I knew better. Days passed. Then, another text. "I'm watching." I barely slept. I locked every door, every window, but it didn't matter. One morning, I woke up to another picture, this time of me sleeping. He had been inside. That night, I left my apartment, checking into a hotel under a different name. I kept the lights off, sat in the darkness, and waited. At 3 a.m., my phone buzzed again. "Come outside." I called the police. This time, they caught him. Karen had been living in an abandoned house 2 blocks away. Inside, they found pictures of me, strands of my hair, even my stolen clothing. He had been following me for weeks before we ever met. But the nightmare wasn't over. Even with him behind bars, strange things continued happening. My belongings were moved when I returned home, my mail went missing, and sometimes I felt eyes on me when I walked at night. The police assured me he had no accomplices, but I wasn't convinced. One evening, Ria and I went through my apartment carefully. That's when we found it, hidden in my closet, a tiny black camera wedged between the folds of my winter coats. I yanked it free, my hands shaking. How long had he been watching me? And more importantly, who had placed it there after his arrest? The thought chilled me to the bone. I changed apartments, moved across the city, and cut off all unnecessary contact. The fear didn't leave me, though. Every unknown number sent me into a panic. Every knock on the door made my blood run cold. Then, exactly 1 year later, on Valentine's Day, I received a final message. "Happy anniversary, Mira. I'll see you soon." The number was untraceable. The police said it could be a hoax, someone playing a cruel joke. But I knew. Karen was out. And he was coming back for me. Hey everyone, thank you so much for supporting this channel. It truly means a lot. As a broke college student editing all my videos on an Android phone, it takes a lot of effort to bring these stories to life. A laptop would help me create better content faster, so if you enjoy my work, please subscribe and share. Your support makes all the difference. Thank you so much.